Hello there. Today we are talking about all the things that you need to have, or I should say the key things that you need to have in place for running a virtual business. And virtual is really the key here when it comes to wanting to be able to work from anywhere and take your business with you wherever you may need or want to go. And I say we because I have a special guest joining me for this topic today, Bookkeeper Kelly Christian. And hang on, we've figured out now I can just click one button. And here's Kelly. Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Great to have you.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah. So if you're a fan of Nomadtopia Radio, you may actually already have heard Kelly's name because she is also the guest on this week's episode of the podcast. So we're diving into some topics today that we didn't have a chance to really get into detail on the podcast, but I will share the link to where you can listen to that as well. So Kelly, welcome. We are going to talk about running a virtual business. And part of the reason I wanted to do this with you is because, first of all, this is something we both do, but also as we touched on in the podcast interview, this is something that I feel like you have some particular experience with because you took a business that was not so virtual with your bookkeeping and made it virtual. So actually, let's start there. And also I will say, if you are here live or watching the replay and would like to just pop into the comments, say hi, tell us where you're tuning in from. It's always great to see who's here. And if you have questions about any of this as we go along, feel free to pop them in the comments too. So the first piece here, I think, is around having clients who were used to you being available and like meeting them in person, picking up the receipts in person, whatever was happening there with your particular type of business. So tell us a bit about how you realized like that you didn't want to do it that way anymore. And then how did you move some of those clients to actually be willing to work with you virtually?
Well, the big piece that motivated me to start with wasn't to actually start an online business. But it was because I live in a really small rural town and I had as many clients as I could probably get for my area, and I couldn't grow my business anymore unless I went into driving a 2-hour return trip into town and getting clients that way, right? So then it was like, okay, how do I grow this? And I've always been a bit of an internet marketing geek since started, I had an interest in that, and then it sort of led me down this path into looking at, okay, well, what if I take this all online and get off desktop software and get away from paper, and what does that look like, and how could I expand my business, in a range that's huge, like all across Canada and wherever else somebody could use my services versus just my little town. So that was the main motivation.
Yep. And
once I got that, then it was getting, it took some long time in there to get clear on who my ideal customer was, right? Because we're always looking, and if you're going to look at, the availability of having this giant wide world now, like I can access anybody with who do I want versus just, in a small town, you're taking, the little mom and pop shops, you're taking the construction guy, you're taking the guy that does, heavy equipment, which is my one holdover paper guy. And so that was a big part of it, is deciding if you're going to go from a local business and you're going to reach a wider market, you really have to get clearer about who your ideal customer is, because it is such a wide range, right? So that was a big step. And then once we started looking at the potential of what was there, then it was like, okay, so if I can take this all online, then what do I get to do, and where can I go and adventure and still work? And then it turned into this whole other goal of being, location independent, at least in the winters, because you can see the potential of what that could look like, right? So that was, it sort of morphed as the goal, as it went along, right? So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great point. Well, and that's something I find too, is that people can have all kinds of different reasons for taking their business online or wanting to be location independent, and not even necessarily, like you, realizing at the beginning what else is possible because of that. Yeah. Right? You were just at a point like, I've kind of maxed out my local market here. What do I do next? And then realized beyond that, the other potential that opened up.
Yeah, well, I actually opened up some really cool opportunities to work with people that I would not, like a different market of people that just aren't available in my local things. So it was a different challenge. It was more interesting. It was, it offered a lot more opportunities that way. So that's been a really cool side effect as well, being able to be involved with people's businesses that are, doing really neat and cool things. A bit more inspiring, I guess, maybe, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I get that. And so walk us through, like, if you had some local clients that you still wanted to work with, but you thought, man, if I could get them online, that would really be helpful. How did you go about broaching that topic with them and kind of, easing them into that transition?
That transition was tricky. It was basically I made the decision because I'm using, like, I would go to some clients' places, but also I would pick up stuff, and I did a lot of driving around to do that. I made the decision first to go in and move the software part of it online, right? So move to the cloud. So they didn't really know any different because they didn't handle any of the software. I did it all. And a lot of them I did from my home office anyway, so I wasn't on site.
Yeah.
And I stopped doing that probably 2 years before I moved into sort of moving to cloud-based software, because I just went, no, I'm not doing this anymore. It doesn't make any sense. It's not a good use of my time. So I'd already moved that step. And then the next step was the cloud software and transitioning that. And that took me, I went through 2 tries at moving to cloud software for a couple test clients, and neither of them worked. So I had to pop them back into the desk. So it was a lot of trial and error of finding the right tools.
Yeah.
And then I zero and got really comfortable. It worked well. And so I was able to sort of transition the rest of my clients over into that. Again, most of them didn't know, but getting them moving into using the next stage of tools, which was meaning I'm not getting your paper anymore. Like, I'm not touching your paper. You have to scan it and get it into and upload it somehow. So that was the next stage. And honestly, it wasn't bad. PubDoc, great tool, and that's a tool I use for this with my clients, and it makes it easy. I've got oil rig guys. I've got, like, my little mom and pop shop couldn't do it, and I've got this one holdover guy, again, my heavy equipment operator, and he can't do it. But everybody else was really figuring out the technology, learning it, and moving that way, right? So it was okay. I did lose 3 that, over the process, they weren't happy. They wanted more hand holding. They wanted me to be in the office, and I just said no. So, but I moved on. But as I'm done with those, opportunities opened up to take on more people that were much better suited. So it was just about setting my boundaries and what I wanted my business to look like, and then sharing that with my clients and hoping that they would come along. And if they didn't, then they didn't. And it was scary at first, right? Because I lost a couple of clients that were just like, they're big money, right?
Yeah.
And, but then as I got really clear about what I was looking for, then those opportunities just sort of showed up to replace that, right? So it's a bit of a trusting piece that you make your plan, and it will come into play if you're clear about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned a couple tools like HubDoc, which I know is for scanning and uploading receipts. What other tools, because I think the paperless part of it is, obviously, like, when you have clients who want to hand you like a box full of receipts, paperless is super important, but it's also important for everybody, right? Regardless of what kind of business you're running. If you want to be able to easily pick up and take that work with you somewhere else, the less paper involved, the better. So let's talk about some of those tools. What are some of the other key ones for you that help you keep things paperless?
So I've got, an external drive is a big one, right? Like, and that's something we don't talk about a lot, right, people? But it's a huge deal, right? To not have it all stored on your computer gives you the ability to have a smaller computer too, right? Like a laptop. So if you're trying to be mobile, I've got a Surface Pro, and I love it because it's the size of a tablet, but it doesn't have a ton of built-in memory, right? So having that plus cloud storage, so you've got your 2 of them, is a big piece. I use Google Drive, but Dropbox is good too.
Yep.
And then I know we talked about yesterday, we had a meeting in the collective, right? And we were talking about Evernote and using that for document storage. So that's really cool. And it was a new one that I hadn't thought about doing because it does optical character OCRing, so it pulls the information out and makes it searchable, which is what HubDoc does as well. So that was a really new one for me to learn about how well, that can work as a tool for people that it's not as expensive as some of the other tools, right? And it is, cost does become an issue as you start adding tools on, right? So Receipt Bank does the same thing basically as HubDoc. It's another good option. And it just allows you to take pictures of your receipts with your phone or your tablet, and they get uploaded. And I think everywhere basically but Canada, you can get rid of the paper receipts at that point. But either way, you've still got a copy if you ever need it, right? And it's all right there. It gets filed for you. It can talk to your software. So just that piece of having it, for anything, you can use those kinds of tools, no matter what it is. You can use it for your travel documents, right? Because it's got secure bank levels encryption, right? So you've got the opportunity to use one of those tools and use it for everything. Pull in your home bills, so you could still be paying your bills and still get them without incurring like email. If it's not coming in onto your email, right, and go online and it's a web-based interface, you're using less bandwidth, which is always an issue when we're traveling or on the road or anywhere else, right? So as much as you can get it that it's cloud-based, you're not bringing it into your system or having to download things. It's really effective and helpful across the board.
Yeah, totally. One of the other ones that I use, one of the other ones I use that combines well with Evernote for me is Cam Scanner. Mm-hmm. Because when we talk about like scanning receipts, scanning papers, scanning whatever, these days I think, obviously most of us are not traveling with a scanner. So taking a picture with your phone has become kind of synonymous with scanning. But Cam Scanner, I don't know, something about what it does to your camera.
It's better.
It captures text so much better than just taking a picture.
That's right.
In fact, I remember doing a test for somebody in the collective because she was like, I don't get it. Like, what's the big deal? Like, why can't I just take a picture with my phone? I'm like, you can totally do that. But I took a picture of a grocery receipt, took a picture with my phone, and then took a picture through the Cam Scanner app on my phone. And the difference is really significant. And then she was like, okay, seeing is believing. Now I get it. So Cam Scanner
you can save it as a PDF as well, right? With Cam Scanner versus being an image file. And that's
you can save it as a PDF or as a JPEG. And then from there, you can forward those images that are collected with Cam Scanner. You can forward them to yourself or to somebody else with email. You could forward it into Evernote. You can download it to wherever you want. That has been a really helpful way to keep the paper to a minimum and also to deal when people are like, oh, can you, do whatever and send this back to me? You're like, I don't have a scanner. How am I going to do this? So that's how I keep it.
Exactly. I've been actually another tool that I do use with my clients that helped with like the digital signature pieces. I use 17 Hats as well. For my leads and my onboarding with clients and potentials. So it's got a really great built-in like workflow system and also signature signing, and it's all electronic. Nobody has to, download something or go in Adobe or anything like that. It's super, super simple, but it's a really cohesive ecosystem that it's got everything in one spot, right? So you're not going out and sending and linking stuff. So that's, another integral piece of my whole online business is 17 Hats. And like Dubsado is very similar, and it's a great product too. So they do a very similar thing.
Yep.
And really great doing any kind of contracts or any kind of proposals. They are both, I think, definitely worth their money that you pay out for the time it saves you or for the employees you don't have to hire.
Yeah.
Because it automates it once you get it set up, right? And there's no paper. Everything's so that it's a big piece. That was a big move for me to move into that software. It was another step of making that whole workflow just easy, right? And you're not continually fighting trying to get things signed in the back and forth again. And also, some kind of online booking software too.
Yes.
Is another piece of the puzzle, right? And having that set up and having it moving that way. So again, you're not wasting time because you can't tax somebody when you're out of country, right? Like it's just not an option.
Yeah, exactly. I looked at 17 hats at one point and decided at the time that it was like more than I needed. Because for my editing business, all I really need are to have people sign contracts. And so I just use HelloSign for that.
Yeah.
Which is great.
That works the same way, right?
Yeah. Really straightforward to use. And I've never had anybody be like, I don't know how to use this, or I don't know what I'm doing, or whatever. I just email them a link and I get back a signed contract. Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
Do you have anything you use for faxing? That's the one I haven't found something that I'm really liking because, being the business that I do, Revenue Canada still wants to fax stuff, right? Or wants me to fax stuff, and I haven't found a great one.
I actually, knock on wood, have not had to fax something in years. And so I don't have any that I've used myself. This did come up in the collective recently. Somebody was asking about this. I think for voting, right? In the States, sometimes you can fax back your absentee ballot. Yeah. And I did do a little research and pulled up a few that the names are not coming to mind right now. I feel like it's like fax.com or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They sucked. It didn't work very well. The ones I found too. So.
Yeah, I know that's a tricky piece. It's like, actually, I've seen some funny memes that are like, oh, can you fax this to me? And people say, no, I live in 2018. Like, why are we still faxing anything anymore?
Exactly, right?
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
So that's the government.
Yeah, there's obviously a million other pieces here that we could spend a ton more time on, but I think those are definitely some of the key ones. Anything else come to mind that you feel like your virtual business just wouldn't function without?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I think about having, people around you too is the big piece. Doing a virtual business can be really lonely, honestly, and it's a really big deal. So having people that are doing the same thing, being involved in a mastermind or a group of like-minded people is really huge, right? Just for lessening that feeling of, you're all by yourself trapped in your office with your cat or wherever you are, you never see anybody, right? So that's a really big deal. And then having a place to share resources and ask questions and is always really good. Like the collective's really great for that because it allows people that are running businesses, not all of them are, but people that are also doing a similar kind. So you've got lots of really interesting, great breadth of resources. Yeah. But there's been a couple other groups that I've been involved in. They've been sort of paid mastermind type of ideas where there's just people doing the same thing. So you can bounce. Because you're sitting there in your own head all of the time because you don't have people to bounce stuff off of, and that's, I think, integral to find where that fit is for you and find some people for sure.
Definitely, yeah. And then you can make friends. That's how we first connected, right? Several years ago through one of those mastermind kind of groups. So absolutely, it can really be helpful for making it feel less lonely and also giving you those resources. The one other thing I was just thinking that probably is really key is communication tools, right? In fact, we spent a whole month on this in the collective because it's so important. So, and I know that like you have a local landline, where clients can call you. Still. And so that's the kind of thing that like, wait a minute, if I'm not going to be home, how are those people going to reach me? So I can share in a minute some of the tools that I use, but tell us how you were able to make that work. Because I think we maybe have not said outright that you spent 3 months in Mexico last year. Were able to escape Canadian winter for a bit, and you're going to do the same this year. We get way into more detail on the podcast about how Kelly set that up and made it work. But obviously one of the pieces was, okay, wait, I'm not going to be here to answer my phone. What do I do? So how did you get that set up to work for you while you were gone?
Honestly, I think it was one of the biggest challenges was figuring out the communication and the internet piece because where we stayed, as you know, it was completely off grid. So we stayed in a little town in Baja on the beach, but it was all solar powered, right? So we went there with a big, fingers crossed, hoping the satellite internet was good. And it was great. Like it works as well as mine here in the Tules in BC. So, but the cell service there was amazing. But what I ended up finding was this really great guy. He runs Mexico Sim is what it's called. And there's a Canadian version and a US version. And his name is Vincent. So the guy, he must have answered 400 questions from me. Like, he was so patient, so good, and I can't talk enough about him because he was great. And basically, we got set up a cell plan, a Mexican SIM, and for everybody that doesn't know that in Canada, and I don't know about the US, but it was last December, they deregulated, so they can't charge you, which I had to wait till this happened, but they can't charge you to unlock your phone, where before you were going to have to pay like a couple $100 to get them to do that. And last December 12th or something is when they stopped that. So that made it really easy. But with part of his package that he offers, I got an option to have a call forwarding number that would automatically call forward to my Mexican cell number without any extra charges. So anybody could call me on my landline, even though it wouldn't ring here, and get put through right to my cell phone, and they wouldn't get charged any long distance at all. And the same for my cell phone. So the only tricky piece was texting, because I could text them, and if they responded to my text, then they would get charged international texting fees because from my Mexican SIM. But if they created a new text that went to my Canadian number, it would get forwarded through all of that, and it was okay, right? So that was a bit of a learning curve as I was texting my son, and then we'd get the bill, and it's like, oh my God. But the call forwarding piece was great, because all my phones would ring here, and everything would just come right through to my cell phone in Mexico. So that was back.
You froze a little bit. You're back.
Was a little bit. That's okay. Was two-factor authentication. That was not great, because I had everything set up to come to text to my cell phone, and the text, unless they replied to one or sent a new one after, anyways, they weren't coming through. So I couldn't get into Stripe, I couldn't get into Square, I couldn't get into a whole bunch of things, because you have to have that authentication code, and it wouldn't come by email.
Right.
Yeah. That was a mistake that I hadn't even thought of, right? And it was kind of a big deal for a couple of days there.
Yeah, that's important to know about. And we talked about that actually more on the podcast, so people can hear the details. Yeah. For me, it depends a lot. It depends how long you're going to be gone, whether you have a plan back home that you want to stick with, etc. I'm at the point now, I've been outside the U.S. I go back to visit, but I've lived outside the U.S. for more than 10 years. So needless to say, I don't have like a regular cell phone plan back home. There's no landline. There's nothing like that. And so I rely now on virtual numbers. I have a number with Google Voice, which works for texting. That's a
great thing.
I know. Yeah. Unfortunately, only available to people in the U.S., or rather people who need a U.S. number, right? And then also the other option, which unfortunately does not work for texting, but works great, kind of similar to what you were saying, Kelly, in terms of the calls just showing up where you are, a Skype number is great for that.
Yeah, okay.
And also we talked about that more on the podcast, so I won't get into that too much right now.
A lot of people use WhatsApp too down in Mexico, I find.
Yes. WhatsApp seems to be super popular everywhere but the US and maybe Canada. I don't know why. I guess people figure, like normal texting is fine. I wonder if in some countries, people have plans where you pay per text. And so they figure, I'd rather just have free messages going back and forth with WhatsApp. But of course, you do have to be online to use WhatsApp. So that's a downside if you're not in a situation where you have easy internet access.
Exactly.
And then, of course, depending on the type of clients you work with, there are also tools now that you can take a lot of your communication out of the phone system, so to speak, completely, right? We've got Zoom, we've got FaceTime and GoToWebinar and, what have you, all of these different tools, Skype, obviously, to connect with people directly without having to say, oh, what's your number? Where can I call you, et cetera.
That's right. Well, Facebook Messenger video calling actually is, and audio calling, I found across the board when my son was in Asia, Southeast Asia. We tried everything, and it had the best connection and quality on any bandwidth that he tried. Like, we tried all sorts of options, and it was by far the best one, which is interesting. I wouldn't have, but Facebook's got a bunch of money in their servers, I guess, right? So
yeah, I know. Actually, my husband just got a call from some family in Mexico or in Argentina, and we're in Mexico. And yeah, he said he was shocked at how clear the connection was. So
it was the best. Yeah,
there's tons of options. And actually, for my family now, I finally got them all on WhatsApp, and we pretty much exclusively call each other via WhatsApp now. And 99% of the time, it's like really smooth and easy. And yeah, then they don't have to be like, oh, wait, where are you? What number should I call? And also I find some people have like this mental block that even if you have a local to them number, they think, well, but you're in Mexico. I can't call you at that number, you know, or
I can't call you around holidays.
Right.
So I got a lot.
That too.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. And they're like, you're on holidays. And I'm like, yeah, it's 2.5 months. No, I'm not on holidays. I'm living and working and I'm here. So it's okay. And there's no call. And then they get panicky. Yeah. That they're costing you or they're going to have to pay. And for sure, I had to be very clear about that with my clients. That was the one thing, is communicating really clearly about that they could do that and how that worked. So for sure. It was a big piece of it.
That communication and education piece is super important. And also just kind of setting the expectations, right? Like, this is what's happening. This is how I'm going to be available. This is what it all means. And, you know, don't worry, like, I'm still here for you.
Yeah. And it was actually neat that it's making me, you know, moving into the clients that I'm taking, on now in the space I'm in, they're all sort of trying to do a lot of the same thing. They're trying to be, you know, change their business to match their life, right? So they're all really good about anything like that. It's just a few of the, you know, the old fashioned ones that want a thing, and they've done well. They've come along and are still, you know, along with me despite all the changes. But yeah, and there's a few of those, but most of the rest of them I've moved into just working with people that have online businesses, right? Because it's a good fit.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you know, I'm really bad at being like, okay, we're going to have a 10-minute call, a 15-minute whatever, and then like there's so many things to talk about. So here we are, almost 30 minutes. But I hope this has been... I think it's
time.
Yes, but I hope this has been helpful for those of you watching. If you have further questions or comments, you know, tools that you love that we did not mention, or questions about anything we talked about, absolutely post them in the comments and we will get to them. And as I said before, I interviewed Kelly on the podcast, Nomadtopia Radio. We talked about some of the other details of taking her in-person business online, and also all of the different pieces, tools and technology she set up to be able to do that 3-month stint in Mexico, and having limited bandwidth, internet, and all of these different things. So you can listen to that at nomadtopia.com/142 or wherever you listen to podcasts. And also, obviously, as we were mentioning, Kelly is a member of our private membership community, the Nomadtopia Collective. And there are tons of great people just like Kelly in the collective that are, huge wealth of information and experience and resources for absolutely everything related to running a business online, working from anywhere, living abroad, traveling full time, house sitting, you name it. We're talking about it over there. So that is available at nomadtopia.com/collective. All right. Well, thank you, Kelly. It's been so great to have this conversation with you.
It's been great to see you again, Amy.
All right. And thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
See ya.